Hello, my name's David Milligan and I'm a qualified British Sign Language interpreter. I cover the Central Belt and pretty much all over Scotland. A part of my role as an interpreter is to work both with the hearing communities and the deaf community. Our role is simply to mediate conversation and make sure that a coherent conversation can be had with both parties using their own respective languages. Deaf BSL users need access to interpreters to make sure that important information that's being discussed is easily translated into their understanding language. And that can be vital, particularly within health and social care settings. There's a lot of positives being an interpreter and working with such a great community. However, it does have its downsides, particularly within a social care setting. Sometimes we have to deal with really sensitive and emotional information. Don't forget, us interpreters are human beings as well. An example of that would be maybe having to tell a mother that they're having their child taken away by social services, or having to walk into a cancer unit. This can be quite difficult. For staff, it's really important that you book a fully qualified sign language interpreter, particularly within health and social care. You can find out if they're qualified by checking SASLI, Scottish Association of Sign Language Interpreters, or NRCPD, and don't be afraid to ask the interpreter to show their ID badge. This just means that a fully qualified interpreter is in there and that they have the right qualifications and the right skill set to work in your environment. All fully qualified interpreters and trainee interpreters have to follow a really strict code of conduct. When you're in an assignment, we have to be confidential, we have to be professional, and make sure that we're there to work with both parties. Due to the demand and the limited number of sign language interpreters nationally, it is vital that these are prepared in advance and booked in advance. Of course, in emergency situations, that's different. Agencies, freelance workers will all try their best to make sure they can cover the assignment as soon as possible. When you're booking an interpreter, make sure you try and provide as much detail as you can, such as the times, the venue, who you're working with, and roughly what it's for. We understand that some assignments can run on, but if we try and stick to that time scale, that's the ideal situation, because remember, interpreters are in such demand that may have a knock-on effect on their next assignment. Sometimes we can hold back, that all just depends on the interpreter at the time. During the assignment, try and speak one at a time. And remember, we only have two hands, so it can be quite difficult when there's people talking over each other. You can agree an easy way to interrupt, maybe just put your hand up and then we'll know that you're looking to speak. When in the room, seating arrangements can be quite difficult, depending on the situation. Usually what I tend to do is I let the deaf person go in and decide. It's best practice to stay away from bright windows or dark corners and make sure the lighting is adequate. In terms of preparation for the assignment, depending on the length and depending on the individuals and the context, you may need to book two interpreters. I'll give you an example. In a social care setting, if you're going to a child protection review, it could take a few hours. To have one interpreter to do that is not appropriate. You'd have two and they would co-work in sessions of every 20 to 30 minutes. In addition, I try to avoid using heavy jargon or acronyms, stuff like that. You don't want information to be lost through the interpretation process, and you don't want the deaf person missing out. So if you are going to use them, make sure you explain what you mean by them. In terms of the interpreter meeting the BSL user beforehand, usually, for example, within a GP practice, it's good if an interpreter can arrive there 10-15 minutes early and have that sit-down conversation just to build a rapport with the BSL user, find out the style of language that they use and make sure there's a good understanding of what's expected when you go into the room. So that's normal practice for an interpreter to do. Finally, when in this assignment, it's really important that you keep eye contact with the deaf person and talk to them directly. Sometimes the interpreters can be brought into the equation as if we're an advocate, and really we're not, we're there to interpret. So speak directly to them and try to avoid asking things like, well, can you tell him this? Or can you ask her that? Try to avoid that. Just you ask the question and we'll interpret it.